When an individual produces more than the basic living requirements for himself and his family, the surplus is profit, which he can use as he sees fit. An automobile is not a basic requirement for survival, nor is a television set. Yet most American families want them and have them, because all normal human beings want more than the bare necessities of existence.
The financial crisis in the fall of 2008 was the catalyst for this study. We set out to help businesses better understand new consumers by doing an anthropological study. As we were doing this study, it became clear that people were trying to figure out what exactly was the American dream. And in the process of understanding the American dream, people came to understand what it was to be a consumer. What they eventually ended up at was an understanding about how to ground their behavior as consumers.
We started with a question about the financial crisis, but where we got taken was to the story of the American dream. For people, they really saw this crisis as having an impact on the American dream and what it could potentially mean to people. People were under a great deal of social pressure to spend more than they had. To have the latest fashion, the newest car, the biggest house. In this scenario, America as the land of opportunity became the opportunity to buy.
After spending some time with consumers, we began to see a 5-stage process emerging. The first stage was the realization that consumers had that they were consumers, that they were understanding that was more or less the sole purpose for their life. We call this stage Goodbye Homo economicus, as people understood there is a lot more to life than just consuming more. The second stage in the process is closer to an anger stage, as people start to figure out how they got to this place in the first step. And that stage we call How My Life Is Not Alone. And this is when people started to really understand that they were living in what we call a culture of debt.
Through the arts and crafts of the American stylists, the things about us are made to express our own free spirits and desires.
We definitely heard people talking about the fact that they had come to define themselves based on what they could buy as opposed to who they were. And what we also saw was that this buying to excess, this always consuming more, was really distracting people from living better.
As people were moving out of the second stage, they started to understand the kind of economy that we were growing into. And that kind of economy is what we call a we economy, or people moving from a me economy to a we economy, from more of a selfish economy to an economy where you're really thinking of others. In this stage, people start to see the value of not just having a rational approach to consumption, but also thinking about the emotional value of consuming, and also, importantly, the social value of consuming. In stage 4, we began to see where people were really making changes in their behavior, and we call this stage Unstuffing My Life. In this stage, people were trimming the excess.
We saw from some of the consumers that their initial reaction was to trim the fun out of their lives, not the fat. So they were denying themselves all the pleasures in life, thinking that that was the best way that they could actually save money or prepare for this crisis. We don't really think that that's a long-term strategy. American consumers have lived a lifetime of rampant consumerism. They're going to want to go back to having the fun.
In the 5th stage, people are starting to put it all together and becoming the grounded consumer. One of the major things that they're doing is really thinking through their purchases and really being more strategic about what they do. They truly are a different person than they were when they started. This truly is a coming-of-age story, not just for businesses, but also for consumers. And the new consumer has a lot of opportunities in this new space. The stock market may not be at 14,000, but consumers are smarter now and will get products that really match who they are.
We think that people are going to be looking to get by with less. Now, eventually they will return to consuming, but it's going to be as much smarter and much more strategic consumers.
Yeah, Folgers is different. They blend it special. And you see, Diane, Folgers is mountain-grown coffee.
Is mountain-grown any better?
That's the richest kind.
We also think that they're going to be looking for different things when they're buying. So they're going to be looking for quality, and they're also going to be looking to get an experience, not just an experience from the act of purchasing, but from the experience that the product brings to them. We heard a lot of people asking the question, is it worth it before they bought something? Or they were asking the question, what am I going to get out of it? Not only were they asking this question of themselves as they made each purchase, but we actually heard families spending more time, parents spending time with children, trying to instill these values, trying to help them see, how do I decide what is the value of something?
Is this the end of business as we know it? Yes and no. A lot of times now people are talking about the death of this or the death of that, the death of business or the death of advertising or the death of consumerism. But if we're looking at all these changes as coming of age stories, it's really about bringing new life to all of these institutions. And so is it the death of business as we know it? Probably, but we're going to see all new ways of doing business and all new ways of doing consumption and all new ways of doing all sorts of things that will emerge out of this process. This is why it's critical that we look at this as a cultural crisis, not as an economic crisis.
Until then, class dismissed.